What about leadership when it comes to sustainment long term? I mean, how does leadership play a role? Maybe even let's focus in on like middle management specifically.
I think a lot of times mid-managers, even team leads, depending on what the org structure looks like, folks are put into a position because they're good at what they do. Well, I'm really good at coordinating all the colors and making sure that we get everything running, efficiently, and not run this color 5 times. Let's wait and gather up all this stuff. But I might not be a very good people person. Yeah. Or I want to take that and solve all the problems myself, right? So if we have a leader that realizes that, hey, I really need to be a coach. I need to be a trainer. I don't need to just come out there and solve problems anymore. I need to involve the team to do it.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. We are here in the Lean Solutions studio with a special guest, Craig Tedrow, who has been with Lean Solutions for quite a while. And Craig, this is actually, I'm trying to think, the last time that we sat down and recorded an episode was probably a number of years ago, right?
Probably 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So I have the privilege of interviewing one of our internal consultants, an amazing coach, a good friend, has been a solid rock here at Lean Solutions, helping so many organizations to transform their processes in the right way, looking for long-term sustainment within their organizations. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today is how do organizations drive long-term sustainment within their organizations? But before we dive into that, welcome to the show, Craig.
Well, thanks, Patrick. Yeah, it's good to be here in the new office. The space is great. A lot different than our other one. Our other one worked great for the time that we had it. It was a new place, but now you have a little longer drive to work, but not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously having a cool recording studio like this is pretty neat rather than all of our virtual, which we'll still do some virtual recordings with people that are outside of the West Michigan area. But for those that are coming here to West Michigan and popping in to tour the new office, there will be an opportunity maybe to record a podcast while you're here. So
Excellent.
In the new studio, which is kind of cool. So Craig, for those that are listening in, I threw a little bit of an intro to you of, just based on you and I working together for the last, it's been, I think 8 years or so, 7 or 8 years now.
I think we met in 2013 or 2014. That's when I started in the carbon fiber industry where I met you.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right.
Yep.
Actually, why don't you tell our listeners, I think if they were to go back 4 years ago and listen to our episode that we did way back, they probably hear the story, but how did we meet? Why don't you refresh our listeners on how we actually came together?
Sure. That is kind of unique. What I like about this story is it really talks about my first intro to Lean, which I got, I would say back in the 90s. I started at a large office furniture company in Grand Rapids. It was a fantastic place to work. I started in the mid 80s, 1984. So that's when I hit manufacturing. And back in the day, we used to batch manufacture everything. Mm-hmm. So we built hundreds of this and hundreds of this, and we'll sell it, right? And we did, but we moved stuff around all the time. We damaged things. I mean, there were so many things wrong with that approach, right? So then they introduced Lean to everybody on the floor. So I remember when Lean came in, I don't know what it was about it. I almost felt like it was being done to us. It was a fantastic company to work for, but just the way that I approached Lean was just like, stop adding more work to me. You're just coming in trying to tell me how to do my job.
Yeah.
I'm the expert at this. I've worked so many positions on the floor, hanging a paint line, building drawers, building PEDs, which is a name for pedestals, mm-hmm. or a file cabinet. Mm-hmm. And so I did all these different positions. And it took a while to learn all those things. Sure. But then to have folks come in, say, well, you need to do it this way. That was where I think I put the brakes on.
Okay.
I was not promoting Lean probably for the whole 27 years I was there.
Wow.
I was a good employee.
Yeah.
I still did everything that I needed to do.
Sure.
I take things very literally. So when it comes to that, I made sure that I did all that stuff right. But I was not really coming up with suggestions, coming up with ideas, coming up with improvements, things like that.
Yeah.
So if we fast forward a little bit, I'll give the little bit of the condensed version so we can get to our topic.
Can I ask you a quick question about
Sure.
that real quick? So Craig, what did that look like when they started to do lean to you, when it was done to you, as you say? What was there rumblings among the like frontline employees about like, what is this stuff that's coming out? Did they put you in a classroom? Did they come out and coach? Like what exactly did it look like when it was rolled out?
I don't remember a lot of the classroom, if there was, because I think if we would have went in and talked about topics, related them to everyday life, which is what I love to do, then people can start to see how, oh, this does help me, right?
Yeah.
So I think what had happened, if my memory is correct, and this was a while ago, but they would come out to the floor and say, all right, why don't we do it this way? This is how we can signal when you need to produce something. And they started pretty much just telling us how to do these things. And I remember it was met with a lot of, oh, this is a flavor of the month, or what are we going to do next month? Here, let's 5S our table, and let's put marker around our ink pens and our coffee cup and the phone, and write phone. This was when we had the big phones on the desks, right, back then too. Ashtrays. We had ashtrays.
You had to mark where the ashtrays were?
Well, we did, because we were being pretty sarcastic about it. So yeah, we thought, oh, this will be fine. We'll just label everything, right?
Sure.
So I just wasn't on board the train of lean, right? So to fast forward a little bit, I ended up taking a buyout after working there 27 years. I wasn't quite 50 yet. So my wife and I said, why don't you go back to school, learn something new? So that's what I did. In 2011, I left the company that I worked for, went back to school, full-time student. I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
I went for computers. So if you have any help with things in this room, you don't want to talk to me. I am terrible at computers. And this just from our 6 years of really working together.
Right.
I carry hardline cables with me all the time. I don't like the Wi-Fi, right? It always messes me up.
Yeah.
So I go back to school. I come out of the with a degree in computer networking, and it's like, I'm really not good at that. So I went back into manufacturing. So what do I know, right? So I went through a temp agency in 2013. I started with a group of folks at a carbon fiber company in Walker. We were making the Corvette hoods, roofs, rockers, and splitters, and some body panels. I love cars anyway, so it seemed like a good fit.
Right.
And it was 12-hour shifts. It was a very dirty job. I started on the raw line, which is where they put almost all new people there, sanding raw carbon fiber. Excuse me. Sanding raw carbon fiber. So I'm covered in dust, head to toe. It was a dirty job, but I enjoyed it. Again, I enjoyed being in manufacturing.
Right.
And then they had asked for some improvements at this company. Hey, does anybody have any idea what we can do to make your day a little bit easier, right? So I started to think to myself, well, I hide my sanding block under the line all the time so I can find it the next day. So maybe some tool boards would be nice, right? We had these big banquet tables that all our supplies were brought to.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have where our sandpaper's in an area, our aprons are in an area, our sleeves are in the same area, so we can get started a little bit faster. So I turned in a few of these suggestions, and a couple days go by. And then I have a tap on my shoulder. I'm out working on the line. And this person says, hey, I'm the CI manager here. And would you like to work with our team and implement some of your suggestions? And that was, I think, the first time that the fire was really lit under me for lean. That really got me excited about it. I remember going home and telling my wife, hey, they're asking for my ideas. They also want me to come in and get some overtime if I want to implement my ideas.
Sure.
So that was super exciting.
Craig, how was that different from the other company when lean was rolled out? Did they not ask for suggestions, or was it just maybe more just you need to do this, or what was their approach there?
Well, they asked for suggestions. And I remember when you turned in a suggestion, you got, I think at the time it was a small monetary gift, I think $25.
Okay.
And then that was taxed as discretionary income. So we kind of figured out what that was. So it's like, all right, I'll turn my idea and I get $17, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So again, it wasn't taken very good by me as far as turning ideas in that way.
Sure.
But when this continuous improvement manager came out and tapped me on the shoulder, it was like, that's what got me more involved in it, because I was actually offered some overtime to come in and work with folks. So my ideas, exactly. So I could see it through to, that's how I want the tool board to look, or what I think. We could always change it, right? Another thing, we had to record the serial numbers of all the hoods. So I thought, let's weld a stand at the end of the line, put it on a 45-degree angle so people don't use it for drinks. And we have a clipboard there. And then whenever I have to write the serial number down, I can just write it down. It's right there. So the ideas were very simple, very basic. Well, the funny part about that was that continuous improvement manager was you.
Yeah.
So
I happen to know the end of the story.
Heard that story before. But what I like about that story is it's 100% how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said I was training somebody when you went out there to do that. I did like training folks. I liked having folks feel at ease when they're working on these expensive car parts, right? Because it was a nice thing. It was nice to be able to see a car on the road and say, hey, we made that.
Yeah. I think that was the point that I remember, because I remember walking into this area where the sanding was happening and everybody was hard at work. And I remember you were standing, I think, next to someone more, coaching them and teaching them. And I was listening to how you were coaching. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, why don't we see more of this? Like this is what we need, out here. We need people that understand how to properly coach someone and they're willing to do it. And so I said, I think I even asked, like, who is this supervisor, what's his name or whatever. And they were like, no, he's a frontline worker. Like he's just stepping off of his pedestal and he's, helping this other person out, out of his own, just wanting to help out. And I was like, man, this is what we need, people like this. So that was pretty amazing.
But it's funny you say that, because, and I say this to a lot of folks too, it doesn't matter if you have leader in your title. Yeah. You can still be a leader, right?
So true.
Because I followed people at the first company I was at. There's people that modeled good behavior, some kind of just enough to get by. Yeah. But what do I want to do? Do I want to model some behavior, right? Right. So everybody can be a leader, whether it's in your title or not. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's what I like so much about Lean too. Yeah. Because everybody's ideas count, right? If you follow through with that. That's right. So, and that was something that this company did. Sure. And I remember coming in, you said, here's a spot to set your computer down if you need it. I brought my computer. I don't know why. I'm just thinking, I got to do this, right? I'm going to work with this team, continuous improvement team. We went out and did a Gemba walk. You had those regularly. I remember going with a team that you had just to go out and talk to folks on the floor. How are things going? Checking in with people. Not to let, almost to our topic, not to let some of these improvements just kind of fall away. Right. To show that they're important. Yeah. But that was a turning point for me. And I love that story because it's true. Yeah. And it just got me so excited about Lean. Yeah. And I'm still married. It's 30 some years now. I can't label anything at home anymore. Yeah. But I do a lot of 5S in my garage. Clear totes, get rid of the totes you can't see in anymore because the labels never mean the same thing. So anyways, all these little things I do at home. Yeah. Well, it becomes a part of who you are. And if you really believe in it, if you really genuinely understand that, how it works and why it works. And, that's when you really start to get the benefits of having a true continuous improvement culture, is when the people are so passionate and they're genuinely interested and want things to change. And you start to see it in your personal life. And I think that's really the key. One of the things that I stand behind, there's really three areas for, in the book that I wrote a few years back, there's two companies that I talk about. And one of those companies had a true culture of continuous improvement. And there were three areas that they were very passionate about. The first one was establishing a clear understanding or clear expectations for team members. What are the expectations? What are you asking of me? Why do I need to do this? Why is it important? And helping them to understand truly what's expected, right? The second one is an enabling action. And this is the one that a lot of companies struggle with because they're just so busy. They're like, how do we find time to improve? And my response is, how do you not have time to improve? If you don't do this, you're going to fall behind. You have to figure out how to enable your team members to take action. And then the third one is sustaining the improvements. You have to have a clear plan on how you're going to sustain those improvements. So you talked briefly just a minute ago about the enablement, right? So at this company that you and I were at, they told me the same thing. They said, we don't have time to take people off the line. We don't have time. We got these orders that got to be, and this was an automotive tier 1 manufacturer. So it was like, how do you get people to be engaged and involved in the improvements, but you can't take them off the line, so that's where we had to get creative and, I have a budget for some overtime. So let's offer that to some people, see if they'd be interested. And obviously you took that and said, yeah, let's do it. And that was the only way that we could implement those improvements at that time. Funny thing is, fast forward a few months, maybe a year, 2 years, we started to open up availability during the workday because we were able to remove a lot of the wasteful activities that we were doing, which caused us to have to do it on overtime. And now we started doing it during regular time. But
I say all of that because I want to get to the third point, which is sustaining improvements, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Hmm.
So when it comes to sustainment, you've worked not only at that company, you spent almost 30 years in another company, but since then, in the past 6 years, I mean, you've worked with hundreds of companies in helping them to uh, deploy lean principles and get a clear understanding of what the expectations are when it comes to developing a true culture of continuous improvement. You've helped them get creative about how to enable action, and you've also helped to create really robust sustainment plans for organizations when it comes to continuous improvement. So the first question that I have is, a lot of times what I see when we go into organizations is they get really excited up front. They have leader buy-in. Maybe they bring in a third party like us, and they're excited, they're energized, and for maybe, I don't know, 9 to 12 months, there's a lot of really, really powerful things that are happening. But then after 12 months, it almost seems like sometimes things teeter off.
Hmm.
The momentum gets lost, the excitement kind of gets drained. What are some ideas or maybe some real things that you've been able to do to help get past that? Because this is a long-term commitment. Lean is a long-term commitment. It's not something that you just spend. It's not an event based where you do one or two events. It's not where you just, let's work on this one for 6 months and then we'll create some other methodology that we'll bring in. No, lean is a long-term engagement. It's embedded in your organization. So how do you get past that 1 year? What are some strategies that you've used to really help people to sustain improvements past year one?
Well, first of all, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying a little bit ago as well. When we want to have an improvement, what I always thought back in the day, a long time ago,
Mhm.
was we're going to improve this. We're going to create a little bit of extra time in our day. It might take a few seconds less to do this task. They're just going to pile more on our plate.
Mm,
So that's kind of how we looked at it, right? And it's like, explain to folks why we want to do this. We want to remove some steps out of here so you're not rushed all the time,
right.
right? We want to have everything you need so you don't have to grab the casters you need for the bottom of this unit or the right sandpaper for this because because you don't have enough at your space. So by doing that and making that a part of your life, it actually makes the day easier.
Mm,
So that's one thing. I mean, that's a big part of it. Let people know why they're doing what they're doing,
right.
not to just give you extra work.
Right.
This might give you an extra 5 minutes to clean up at the end of the day,
Yeah.
which would be awesome,
Yeah.
if we could have that too. Because you want to give people time to clean, especially how dirty we were working with a carbon fiber, right?
Oh,
You
sure.
want to make sure you have time to do that. But a lot of times these things are events. They're treated as such. They're very exciting in the beginning. Back when we used to do 5-day kaizens, you'd have leadership kickoff and training and pizza and donuts and pizza and coffee and everything. I mean, everything was given to us,
Yeah.
right? For these,
Yeah.
it was a great thing. And then it would fade off. Sometimes a year is almost being generous, right? That things
Mhm.
are going good.
Right. Right.
So what we can do when we want to embed this into our culture is show how important this was, or how important it is next week and the following week and the following
Mhm.
week.
Mhm.
So get out there. If leaders can put this in their leader standard work, if they're using it, which I hope leaders are,
Mhm.
just as a note taking and a reminders. Hey, I'm going to go out and check that line. We improved the Dodge Viper refinishing line, but I'm going to go out there and make sure it's staying the way that the folks wanted it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the team came together, decided how they wanted to do it. We've got to make sure and give it a chance. So put that in your leader standard work. Go out there, keep revisiting. Say, hey, I know we did this Kaizen a few weeks ago. How are things going today? Are we still holding up, right?
Right.
Are we still holding up our end of the deal too? If we promised some fixtures, some tooling, different things, did we get that to you? We don't want to take our foot off the gas after that first week. Then everybody really gets that, oh, it's the flavor of the month. Here we
Yeah.
go again.
Yeah.
I'll
Exactly.
do the next Kaizen. Never mind. I'm just going to go back to how we were doing it before.
Right.
So get out there, double check that people are doing what they wanted to do in the first place. And
Right.
that's the other key thing. It's not what the supervisors think we should do
Mhm.
or the managers. It's what the folks that actually do the process. Hopefully they were totally involved in the Kaizen or in the
Right.
improvement process. We did some interesting ones where instead of having a week-long Kaizen, we had a 5-hour Kaizen.
Mm.
So we hit a lot of big ticket items that were important for folks,
Mhm.
but we walked away with a very small action list,
Mhm.
things that we could get done right away and make the process better right now.
Sure. Sure.
So that was another way that we could do some of those things too. But I think revisiting it, is so important.
Yeah.
Because when we don't, we've taken our eye off it and say, it's not that important anymore.
Yeah.
And I like to say sometimes when continuous improvement is running good, it can be kind of boring. But I like my plane rides boring too. I like that the pilot does the checklist and does all of these simple, basic things. And if you asked anybody in an airplane, we're kind of in a hurry, would you mind if the pilot didn't do his checklist? I don't think anybody would say, yeah, that's fine. Let's go. I'm always like, hey, take your time.
Yeah.
I remember on a plane once we were waiting for the pilot to get there. And I thought, boy, I hope he's not rushed and all, frazzled like I would be if I was late. All these people are sitting on a plane.
Right.
Give him a cup of coffee, tell him to take his time and do his checklist. So I think those things are just super important.
Yeah, so important. I think that's a great example for sure too, because a lot of times we do things get chaotic. We got customers calling, we got quality issues, whatever it might be. You got to fall back on the important things, the inputs, as we say, that are going to give you the results that you're looking for. And if you just start skipping over those, then you're living in a complete unstable, chaotic mode, and that there's no way you can improve in that mode. So I think that's a really, really good point. What about model areas? I mean, do you use the concept of like a model area to start? And, is there a way to keep the momentum going, after you get past that at all?
I think using a model area is a great way to do that. Instead of being, I think it's like a mile wide and an inch deep, or something like that. Let's really go in and commit to this area, really make an improvement, make it like a showcase.
Sure.
Involve the people. Still definitely that improvement with the folks that do the job.
Yep.
There was something that my mentor had always told me. And this was after you had left that company. I actually became the CI manager at that company, and we were growing very fast, right? So this mentor that I had, one thing that was super important with this person, and he always told me this, get out there, talk to every shift before we make a change. So I would go down there with an easel board, set it up, and I would typically meet with third shift first, because I've worked all shifts, second and third, and I know what it's like. Sometimes they feel, like they're left out.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And it's just the nature of the beast. In the middle of the night, there's not as many people around. So we met with them every shift with that easel board and said, write your ideas on here. This is what we want to do in this area with your help. We can't do it without you. So then we get the whole team involved. We take this model area. We get it flowing the way they want it to. Maybe it's a 5S event. Maybe this area was totally cluttered. And we treat that as, hey, this is what good looks like. So we can take people to this area. I was at another large company in Holland, and they did this model area where this team lead took her team to watch a startup meeting. They were not doing startup meetings in this area. She took her team over there and said, hey, let's watch a startup meeting. And the team watched that and they thought, this is really cool. They're going over what their numbers are for today, who's leaving early, if anybody is, anybody that has any special issues, maybe problems they had yesterday. And she showed that to this team. They went back and recreated it in their area. So I think it just shows how powerful model area can be. People go and see it and they're like, hey, I like this. This is what I want in my area, because my area is a mess, right? So go in, work with the folks, and then keep checking on them. If you write it in your leader standard work, I'm going to go out and check on that process that we improved, just to make sure that people are improving that.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing too is, after say, 6 months, 8 months, once you've kind of worked through all the learnings in that area, and now you can take one or two of those people, bring them to another area, or like you said, bring people over to that area, and now we start replicating that across the site, across the plant, to other areas that that we can make our next model area. And so that duplication of the learnings, then you start to get this momentum, and it's like the first model area, you're like pushing the rock uphill, and by the time you get to the top, and you start, other people see the learnings, they experience the excitement, they see the improvements and the metrics, and now there's an opportunity for that rock to get the top of the hill, and now it's like the momentum is there, and you just capitalize on that, and I think that can help with sustainment long term as well. What about leadership when it comes to sustainment long term? I mean, how does leadership play a role? Maybe even let's focus in on like middle management specifically. Obviously, we need to have upper leadership engagement. We need to have their buy-in. We need to have them removing roadblocks for us. But when it comes to middle management, the people that are out there, maybe at the model area or out there helping to train and coach or whatever it might be, how important is it that they're engaged? And maybe if you have any thoughts or ideas about how anyone who's listening, who's a mid manager, what advice would you have to them?
Oh, that's a great question, because I think a lot of times mid managers, even team leads, depending on what the org structure looks like, folks are put into a position because they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
So I could be really good at coordinating a paint line. Now all of a sudden I'm in charge of a paint line, right? Well, I'm really good at coordinating all the colors and making sure that we get everything running, efficiently, and not run this color 5 times. Let's wait and gather up all this stuff. But I might not be a very good people person.
Yeah.
Or I want to take it and solve all the problems myself, right? So if we have a leader that realizes that, hey, I really need to be a coach, I need to be a trainer. I don't need to just come out there and solve problems anymore. I need to involve the team to do that. Maybe reference some back projects too. Remember out in the model area, we interviewed everybody that does that process. Let's do that over here. Let's talk to those folks and find out what's making their job hard or what's making it easy, right? What do they like? What can they replicate there too? So I think sometimes we look at managers or team leads and think, we put them in that position, they're going to be a great manager or a great team lead because they were great at running that machine. They're great at coordinating that paint line, or great at finding parts and getting units out the door. But they might not have those skills as far as to be a coach, to be a trainer. And it's kind of hard to sit back and watch somebody try something, even though we might know that that's probably not going to fix it. But if we have time and let them experiment, then they can know, all right, that way is not going to work. Let's try it this way.
Right.
So I think, being a coach is super important.
Yeah.
And then to be relaxed when you're out there, like if you are training somebody, that was something that I thought was really important, depending on what parts you're working with. Some of the parts we worked with were pretty expensive.
Right.
And we have people just like me. I was hired in through a temp agency, and I'm a little bit nervous, putting a sander on a Dodge Viper, right? How is that going to work? So yeah. I think middle management, team leads, their role is just vital. And there's some great ways to get out there and improve that too.
Sure.
If you need to work on those skills, there's things you can do to improve that too.
Yeah.
That could be a whole nother topic.
Well, and you touched on it a little bit with leader standard work, but we as leaders, as team leads, as mid managers, we ask our employees to follow standard work, but yet many of us don't have our own standard work for what we should be doing as leaders. And I think, that's a really good starting point for any leader that's listening in is, just asking yourself, what are the inputs that are necessary in order for us to get the outputs that we're looking for? Gemba walks, how often should I be doing those? Audits, audits of standard work, audits of 5S, coaching time, like actually blocking time to go out and coach. I mean, these things are so important when it comes to ensuring that you're developing the right culture of continuous improvement.
Right. And I think as a new leader, if you were promoted to that, you might think that, boy, I can't spend an hour just going out and talking to people. I need to be out there producing or doing something. But that is producing.
Right.
You're producing good employees that can think for themselves and showing that respect. I think being a good listener is probably one of the best skills that any manager or team lead can have. Go out there and talk to folks and actively listen. Find out what their problems are.
Be interested.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. Let's talk about you mentioned events, Kaizen events specifically, and Kaizen events are definitely important and can get us like very far, very quickly in a short amount of time. We can move the needle very far. But what would your thoughts be on systems versus events? Like, do we just do events, or are there other things that we can do when it comes to like systems or embedding continuous improvement into the way that we do things? What are your thoughts on that?
I think if we just do events, like you even mentioned earlier, like, all right, we're going to do 4 events a year. That might sound like a great strategy, at upper level. But if we don't build these habits into our everyday life, it becomes just an event. It's like, all right, here's Christmas. All right, then wait till next year.
Right.
Well, we can't do it that way. We need to have these habits built in. And I think about, I'll go back to my garage, 5S'ing my garage. I have wire racks now and clear totes for everything. I remember being out in the yard with a clear tote, all my sprinkler stuff, the washers and things like that. And these are just above ground sprinklers, but they need a little bit of attention, right?
Sure.
So I went in the house for something. And when I went back out there, I couldn't find my screwdriver. So I'm thinking, what do I do with my screwdriver here? I'm all organized, right? So I thought, all right, I'm going to go back in and grab another one. So I go to the drawer where I keep the screwdrivers. And sure enough, the screwdriver was there. So I had subconsciously, I guess, put it away, right? As I was walking in the house to do something. I remember I was so excited that after I don't know how many times of leaving it out,
And
just muscle
searching
memory,
and
it just kicked in. I didn't even know I did it, right? It's like
wow.
putting my seatbelt on. I don't remember doing that this morning, but I know I did.
Yeah.
So I remember I was so excited. It's like, hey, I just did this on my own. I go in and tell my wife. She looks at me like, that's great. That's really nice.
Greg, you should have called me.
I,
Like
yeah,
we
you
got
would
to
have
support each
appreciated
other
it.
in
Yeah,
this,
you would have appreciated
I mean,
that.
obviously, Lisa, your wife is an amazing woman. There's just something different about us continuous improvement nerds that
Exactly.
gets us
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
You know,
So just for me, doing that without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think lean needs to be.
Mm.
And then when I go out in my garage and I know where something is,
Yeah.
I absolutely love that because I'm not wasting time looking for it.
Right.
So one of the most exciting things to me is when I have somebody, whether we're doing some training, when they come back and they say, hey, I rearranged my laundry room or I rearranged the pantry or something, when they take this and do it in their home life,
Yeah.
to me, that really cements those habits too. It's like, this just makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, no one's going to go run errands and drive to a store and come home and go to another store and come home. And I know that's very basic, example, but you're going to, do it in a sensible way.
Right.
And think about, things that we do at home that way too.
Mhm.
So whenever we can tie those things in with a class and let them know, oh, I guess that does make sense to do it that way. Then you're going to free up some of that time,
Right.
because you're not searching for that stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
So, or buying another screwdriver, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then to find the ones you have.
Yeah. And that actually leads me into my next question, regarding employee engagement,
Mhm.
because there are some signs when you go through facilities and you're just taking a walk tour. You and I do this a lot where we just go tour facilities and spend time asking questions. And what signals good employee engagement when you walk through a facility? Are there any surefire signs where you're like, man, these people are excited about continuous improvement? What do you think? Anything?
Well, yeah, I think when you see people talking and coaching others, which I've seen that actually more often than I thought I would see, somebody showing somebody how to do something. So it's like, look, they're taking that on. They're being a leader almost, right? They're not waiting to find someone to go ask somebody else. They're stepping up, helping with that.
Mhm.
Another thing I like to see is folks that, sometimes I'll hear, well, we don't need standard work here. Everybody knows how to do the job. And then we'll look, and on the machine, there'll be a piece of paper stuck there, and there'll be a little red arrow or a green arrow, like, hey, turn the machine to this setting or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I think folks are actually asking for some standards
Right,
here
right.
because they're writing them themselves,
Yeah.
right?
I think about the same thing where you see like someone will print out like an instruction or they'll
Mhm.
write something and then tape it on there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're asking you for
Yes.
visual instructions.
Yep. They've
right?
just done a great improvement, right?
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
They've taken the initiative to do that.
Right.
So when you see people that do that and then point that out to others and say, look, I think you guys are asking for it. You're not really formally asking for it, but we can see that when we go in there.
Yeah.
So I just think that's important. And I also like to talk to the operators. I mean, if there's time, obviously you're in some facilities and you can't just pull people off the line at any time. But if you do ask them a few questions and they generally get excited about it, sharing it, and that someone's listening to them.
Yeah.
That's another thing that folks, I think, are ready for it. Right.
For sure.
I like to think about people that want to pull lean.
Mhm.
Let's not push lean on people. Let's let people pull lean and get excited about it. Hey, I saw that model area over in the ped cell. Can we do that over in the U cell maybe?
Yeah.
Then you get people start asking about it.
Right.
Then you've got something, right?
That's right.
And then when people know that, hey, the improvement's going to make my day a little bit easier, they're not just going to dump a bunch more work on my plate.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to make an improvement that way.
Right.
Why would I improve this process? They're going to make me do 50 more units now.
Yeah.
Now there comes the point where when we make so many improvements, well, sure, we're going to free up capacity, so that's a great thing.
Mhm.
So we want to do that, but if we make a few improvements and let their lives be a little bit easier, maybe they have more time to clean up at the end of the day. Maybe they won't rush so much and they'll be able to double check a part or make sure they're not rushing through something.
Right.
Generally quality is better.
Mhm.
When people don't feel pressured and under the gun.
Yeah.
I hate to design a process that, only a young athlete can do because we don't
Right.
have folks like that out there. I
Yeah.
got to think about myself. Can I do that at my age, or can my wife do that? Right.
Mhm.
So design processes like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important. You touched on a little bit of like the 10 cycle time study where if we're creating standard work, we're not going to just take the fastest person's time and
Exactly.
try to make that the standard. We're going to look for the lowest repeatable, the ability for us to repeat that multiple times, but the lowest repeatable, set that as a standard, and then try to push people a little bit from there. But it's important that we take into consideration everyone. We don't just set the the
Mhm.
standard based on the fastest, strongest person that's out there.
Exactly. Yep. And I remember when I was in upholstery, there was a woman next to me, and I was new to this line, and I had to upholster this cushion
Mhm.
before it went on a chair. And I'm struggling. I mean, I get it where I think it's all set. I get the press down. I pull on the drawstring, getting ready to staple it, and all the fabric goes underneath the cushion. So I got to pull it out and redo it. And I look next to me, and this woman is just effortlessly doing this upholstery work. And I thought, man, she's got something there, right?
Yeah.
So she told me a few tips what to look for.
Okay.
And while I'm struggling, she's passing cushions behind me. She's doing double the work almost,
Oh, wow.
just to keep the line satisfied, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm starving the line. She showed me those few things, and it made my job so much easier.
Mhm.
And it's about her. I looked at her as a leader.
Right.
Can you help me out here, right?
Yeah.
And she did. She had no problem with that.
Oh, that's
Right.
amazing.
So I think that's just the kind of culture that I think is really nice.
Yeah.
And there were so many people like that,
Mhm.
with my 27 years that I had at that
Oh, I'm
company.
sure,
It was fantastic. Right.
Yeah. Always good people. People come to work. They want to do a good job.
They do. Yep.
Unfortunately, so many of them are working in broken systems.
Mhm.
And so that's a big part of what we do. Obviously, systems is one way that we can sustain continuous improvement long term. But as we kind of wrap up here, what would you say, give our listeners maybe your top three? What are three areas that we should keep in mind as we think about sustainment? How do we get past that first year? How do we continue long term to keep the momentum, to keep the engagement, to continue to show results when it comes to continuous improvement? What would be three of your big hitters?
I think one is to revisit the reason we're doing this in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to try to make a process, a little smoother to free up capacity, maybe we want to get some new orders in, right? Let people know, hey, we're looking at getting new product in here. We want to make this better. So revisit, the way, the reason that we're doing it the way that we are now. I think another one is investing in saving those few seconds too, right? Go out there, have folks make their job just a little bit better, and celebrate those wins. If we had to build a pet, I think it was 49 seconds, something like that. If we trim that down to 45 and we're doing 725 of these a day, that's freeing up, a little bit of time there.
Yeah.
A little bit of time.
Up.
It does add up. And then I think visiting that model area, go look at that area again. Why are we doing this, right? This is what we want this area to look like.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'll even throw a fourth one in there. Add it to your leader standard work. Make a note of it. Go out there and show the folks that this is important.
Yeah.
Hey, we did this 3 months ago. Is this still working out okay for you? Just ask that question, and then they're showing me respect. They're asking if I still like it, if it's still working out,
right,
or if I could change it.
Right.
Because it's always fun too when you go into a place and everybody rearranges things and they think, oh, this won't work. It's like, well, let's just try it. Right.
Yeah.
At the end of a couple of days, it's like, would you like us to put it back the way it was? Because we can do that, right? And most everybody's like, no, well, we'll give it another week, right? Or something like that, right?
Right.
But because I know that we did make some improvements.
Yeah. No, that's huge. Really, really good advice. And obviously, we could talk forever about just the so many years of experience and the different things that you've been involved in. Obviously, I mentioned this at the beginning, but you're one of our at Lean Solutions here. You're one of our top consultants, our top trainers. You're out there working with companies in all different industries: healthcare, government, medical device, manufacturing,
nonprofits.
Yeah, nonprofits. If anyone's listening in and they'd be interested to talk with you about training or coaching, anything like that, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
They can hit me up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Let's connect on LinkedIn.
Sure.
That's one way to do it. Go to findleansolutions.com, schedule a call with any one of us. I love going into these different companies and the different different industries.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll never forget this. This happened a few years ago.
Mm.
You landed in Portland, Oregon, and I landed in Portland, Maine on the same day.
Oh yeah.
And I think you were working on pizzas and I was working on COVID test kits.
Yes.
It's like, what do I know about COVID test kits and laboratories, right? I didn't have to know. The people know.
Yeah.
You just need to get in there and get them talking amongst themselves.
That's
Say,
right.
what's going to make your job easier?
Mhm.
And then, don't let folks think, oh, you're just blowing smoke, right?
Mhm.
No, that's really how it has to be. We
Right.
have to get the folks involved.
Yeah.
And that's something that I do like our approach.
Right.
It's involving the operators.
Yep.
If we can involve them, get them to think that, oh, lean's not such a bad thing.
Mhm.
It does make my job better, and I'm not just going to get dumped on. I love that when somebody it's the old cartoon where they finally get their inbox, cleaned up, and then some big bulldozer dumps a bunch of stuff in it again.
Right.
How defeating is that, right?
Yeah.
That's not the reason to make improvements, just to make people work harder.
Right.
But it could be to increase capacity, and hopefully your company is sharing that. Hey,
Right.
we want to get some new product in. We want to make this process a little faster so we can add some new product to your line, right?
Yeah.
Most people like to hear that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, it's been great to have you on. I have the opportunity to see you in the office just about every day when we're here.
Yep.
But I do appreciate you giving some wisdom to our listeners and just all the work that you do for our clients. We just so much appreciate you.
Yep.
So thanks for being on the show today.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Patrick.